Okay, I'm gonna continue reading The Horn God of the Witches. It's chapter 5. Pan and the Other Horn Gods of Ancient Greece. Mm, I do have beer with me tonight. Well, I'm reading this. The first time I met the Greek god Pan in the pages of D. D. Euler's book of Greek myths when I was in the first grade. Greek myth which is full of incest, adultery, and rape, is hard to pull off in a children's book. But D. Uh, Euler's mostly succeeds. Though, as an adult, I tend to laugh when Zeus's many adulterous lovers are introduced as his additional wives. The pen introduced the D. Eulers is the god and that most of us are familiar with today. I hope I'm saying that name right. Uh, Eulers, I guess, is how you pronounce it. Maybe it's the res on the end that I'm saying. Okay. Also, that sentence back there. Yeah, I don't think I've ever read that book before. That he's talking about. It is true though. Greek myth is has a lot of that stuff in it. Anyway, going on. uh, though as an adult, I tend to laugh when Zeus's many adulterous lovers are introduced as his additional wives. The Pan wait, I already read that. So he had goat legs, pointed ears, and a pair of small horns, and he was covered all over with dark, shaggy hair. He was so ugly that his mother and nymph ran away screaming when she first saw him, but his father, Hermes, was delighted with the strange looks of his son. He carried him up to Olympus to amuse the other gods, and all and they all laughed and took him to their hearts. They called him Pan and sent him back to the dark woods and stony hills of Greece as the Greek god of nature. He was to be the protector of hunters, shepherds, and cruelly fleeced sheep. Most of my adolescence and early adult life, I paid very little attention to Pan. My interest in Greek mythology generally revolved around heroes like Hercules, Perseus, and not surprisingly, Jason and his Argonauts. When I did think about deities, it was usually about powerful gods such as Zeus and Apollo, or Aphro- Aphrodite, who I hope would bring my angst teenage self a girlfriend. Pan seemed friendly enough, at least in the seizures. Sorry, at least in the sanitized myths I was reading, but I didn't give him much thought. Surprisingly, both Pan and the Horn God were absent from my early years as a witch. Back then, my focus was almost entirely on the goddesses. Sorry, no, the goddess, and only the one goddess, the moon, and magic. On the rare occasions that I called a male God into my circle, I called to the Lord of the Sun and envisioned him as a young Apollo, and there were most certainly no horns on the top of his head. When reading books on witchcraft, I tended to skip over the sections dealing with the horn god out of fear. I wanted nothing to do with him, but eventually I began to feel yearning inside to honor the Greek Pan. He came up in nearly everything I read and was a frequent visitor in college mythology and lecture classes. The bushes near the front door of my house also seemed to contain his energy. It sounds silly to write, but I swear there were days when I could see him grinning at me, and those shrubby bushes implored me to acknowledge him. He finally broke through my defenses at an Ostra spring equinox ritual after 7 years of trying to fend him off. In the middle of that ritual, I screamed, "Pan!" and felt his energy wash over me. He had heard my call, and I his in my life would never be the same again. He's primarily why you are currently holding this book in your hands. Pan and Arcadia. Most of us know Pan as a Greek god, but it's probably more accurate to say he's an Arcadian Greek god. Arcadia is a relatively isolated area of Greece located east of Athens on the central Peloponnese, a peninsula just south of mainland Greece. Arcadia is landlocked and mostly consists of rocky hills and mountains. It is not an agricultural area nor the home of great city states like Thebes or Sparta. The ancient Greeks and later the Romans both romanticized Arcadia. It was thought of as a primitive paradise, a land that was older than Jupiter, the god and moon, and its first inhabitants were believed to have preceded the moon. Arcadia was the land of the first Greeks, the perfect place for a god who was unlike any other Olympian deity. Pan's association with Arcadia was so strong in the ancient world that Arcadia was sometimes called Pania in his honor. In Arcadia, Pan was the most important of all the gods, save Zeus, for several centuries was exclusively worshipped there. In 490 BCE, Pan's worship spread to the city-state of Athens, and from there to the rest of the Greek-speaking world. 500 years later, worship of Pan had spread throughout the Roman Empire, from India to Gaul, modern-day France. Pan was never the most popular Greek deities. There were no elaborate temples built for him outside of Arcadia, and his presence in myth is rather fleeting. However, Pan is a frequent motive in art. suggesting that he was popular in the ancient world, even if he wasn't everyone's favorite deity. But what's not to love about Pan? In the ancient world, Pan is the god of music, dance, seduction, possession, panic, lustfulness, shepherds, flocks, and rough sexualities. Pan's gifts um, were generously joyous ones, and as we shall see, panic was dealt only to those who dishonored the god. Music, dance, and lustfulness were not necessities in life, but they do make it worth living. Pan might not have been essential in the way uh, Helios, god of the sun, and Demeter, goddess of the grain, were, but honoring him was still important. Pan was a liminal god existing on the edges of civilized society, which might be why he appeals to so many witches today. Unlike most Greek deities, he chose to make his home on Earth, generally uh, confining him to Arcadia and nearby areas of Greece. In Arcadia, Pan was a shepherd of the goats, a fitting role for someone who prefers solitude to the hustle and bustle of city life. Shepherds spend most of their time away from others, living in nature, with only their goats or sheep for company. Pan's solitude is probably why he is sometimes credited with inventing masturbation. In Arcadia, Pan was worshipped in temples, though his most holy places were entire mountains dedicated to him. Uh, ur- uh, Urbanites who wished to worship Pan most often did so a few miles outside of town, instead of being worshipped in the uh, conveniently located temples. Pan was worshipped primarily in caves that often required a substantial walk. Caves were perfect for the worship of Pan because in Greece they were seen primarily as a temporary dwelling, uncivilized and unfit to live in. They were also sometimes used by shepherds looking to escape an especially cold or harsh night before heading back into the woods. Pan, the gods of Olympus and beyond. Though Pan's origins generally lie in Arcadia, Greece, he has connections to other places and other deities. The name Pan derives from the Indo-European root word pa, which means to guard or watch over. This is also the origin of the Latin word pasture and the Greek root pa, which translates as shepherd. The origin of Pan's name, the origin of Pan's name, Pan literally means shepherd. Pan shares the origin of his name with the ancient Hindu Vedic dynasty Pusan. Like Pan, Pusan had an affinity for goats, and both were gods of pastures. Pan was a shepherd, while Pusa watched over herds of cattle. Pan's father is generally given as Hermes in Greek mythology, though that could vary depending on time and place. In Arcadia, Pan's father was said to be the Titan Cronus, Saturn in Roman myth, and often spelled Kronos like C or Kronos K, which would make Pan the brother of Zeus. In other parts of Greece, his father was said to be Apollo, and even when they weren't linked as father son, the two deities were still connected. Some myths tell Pan of Pan teaching Apollo the art of prophecy, and Pan kept a cave at Delphi where it was said he defied it using dice. Both gods were also musical, with Pan's Syrinx being the did I say that right? Sirens, I guess, being the instrument of the common people, and Apollo's lyre the instrument of sophisticated folks. But it's with Hermes that Pan shares the most attributes. Both were pictured and associated with shepherds. Hermes was also a phallic god like Pan, and was sometimes depicted as just a penis. Hermes is most famous for being the messenger of the gods and overseeing travelers, and in Egypt, Pan was the god of good journeying. As a shepherd, Pan would have had to hunt for his own food while watching his flocks, and Pan was seen by many as a hunting god. As a hunter, Pan's style was rather primitive. Instead of using a bow, Pan was generally depicted with Lagabolan, a slightly curved hunting stick used primarily to kill small game, such as hares. In addition to killing animals for food, Pan was also considered a master of animals, both wild and domestic. In Greek myth, Pan was a frequent champion. Sorry, was a frequent companion of the god Dionysus. Like Pan, Dionysus spent a great deal of time on Earth, though Dionysus eventually moved to Mount Olympus and was fond of the wineskins. Dionysus and Pan were also both phallic deities, with sexual activity strongly encouraged in some of their rites. Both were also popular with female followers, with women often taking the lead when it came to participate in a ritual in honor of those deities. Though Pan never married, he was associated with several goddesses in ancient mythology and art. His most successful courtship was with Selene, the goddess of the moon, whom he seduced by wearing a lamb's wool cloak that reflected her beauty. Selene was so beautiful that she chose to fall in love with her reflection, only to find Pan instead. Pan's courtship of Selene is more than the story of trickery. The two were worshipped together in Arcadia. It was also thought that the moon was preferred champion of Pan because its light is useful to shepherds keeping watch over their flock. Pan was also friendly with the goddesses Artemis, who did not, but not because the two had any great love affair. Like Pan, Artemis was a deity of wild spaces and hunting, though Pan wasn't quite as skilled as his Olympian relative. Pan and Artemis also shared a dislike for the destruction of marriage. Pan, because he was very much against monogamy, and Artemis because she chose to guard her own virginity. Though not frequent champions in mythology, Pan and Aph- Aphrodite were often depicted together in the art. At the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, there is a striking sculpture of Aph- Aphrodite shooting away a horny pan with her shoe. Sorry, shooing away a horny pan with her shoe, while her son Eros, uh, the Roman Cupid, looks on in delight. Some scholars believe that Aphrodite, the actively fight is actively fighting against the advances of Pan in the sculpture, and I find her posture and smile more playful than angry. Uh, the that Eros love clutches one of Pan's horns in the sculpture suggests an eventful and consensual coupling. Pan also has connections for far more ancient pieces of Greek myth. The ancient Greek lyric poet Pindar called him the dog of the great goddess, a power older and stronger than that of Zeus the or the Titans. When early version of the mysteries of Demeter, most associated today with Eleusis, celebrated in Arcadia, may have featured Pan in a significant role. What role exactly? What role entailed exactly is hard to say, but a cave uh, sacred to him was found near a spot where people were initiated into uh, Demeter's mysteries. Demeter what is most well known for being the goddess of the grain and having her daughter uh, Persephone abducted by Hades. As Demeter searched for her daughter on Earth, she gave up her role as a fertility goddess, and the Earth suffered. In many versions of that myth, it's the goddess Hecate who convenes Demeter to return life to the world. But in other visions, it's Pan. God is liminal, a god of liminal spaces existing between humanity and the gods. A goat-footed one is well suited to the role, again suggesting a strong link between Pan and the natural world. Perhaps the most familiar myths featuring Pan are those that involve the god in pursuit of a nymph. Pan does not come across well in these tales, and to call him a rapist in them would not be an exaggeration. Wow. Pan's pursuit of the nymphs Echo, Pythes, and uh, uh, Sirens pit Pan against virginity, a state of being that angers the god. In the stories of Pythes and Sirens, the gods of Olympus turn Pan into a pine tree to save her from the ravages of Pan, while the nymph sisters of Sirens transforms her into reeds to save her from Pan's pursuit, which the god then fashions into his famous pan flute, uh, the Sirens. And the most awful end comes to Echo, who, upon rejecting the god, uh, was torn to pieces by a group of shepherds, driven to madness by the goat footed god. Though her body was destroyed, Echo continued to live on as a disassembled voice. These stories can be interpreted a number of ways. Some see them as cautionary tales, highlighting how important it is for young women to remain virgins. Others see them as examples of what can arise from a sexually divorced marriage. Pursuit of a lover can have beneficial consequences, such as pine trees and pan flutes. The benefits of these transformations don't seem to help Pleiades or sirens all that much, though. Pan and Panic. One of the most difficult of Pan's attributes is his connection to the idea of panic. The word panic actually derives from his name. Pan could be terrible. Pan could have a terrible temper, such as when being expectedly awoken from a afternoon's nap, and his wrath could be violent and terrifying. Although sometimes connected to violence, Pan was not a god of war and never happens. And never appears on the battlefield in Greek art. In 490 BCE, the Greek runner Philip Philippides, sometimes also spelled uh, whoa, that is uh, Phidippides, yeah, Phidippides. Okay, was sent from Athens to Sparta to request a military aid of the Spartans against the Persians. On his way back to Athens, Philippides was met by Pan, and the god promised to aid the Athens of if they would begin worshiping him. The Athenians won their subsequent battle against Poseidon's the battle. Against the Persians. The Battle of Marathon. But just what sort of help Pan give to those Greeks is an open question. It's generally assumed that his assistance occurred not during battle, but before or after, and that he threw the invaded Persians into a panic terror. Panic was known to overtake ancient armies and cause them to turn on themselves. A soldier would hear the word of what they thought to be an invading army in the night and call their comrades to arms. The fear and confusion from such shouts would lead the men on the same side killing one another. Pan is said to have perfected his technique using echo. After the war, the Athenians kept their word and built Pan a sanctuary on the mouth of a cave near the bottom of the Acropolis, where it stands today. When my wife and I visited Athens, the first ancient site that we got to see up close was Pan's sanctuary at the bottom of the Acropolis. When I saw it in a sign. There's another reason Pan helped the Athenians at Marathon. He simply did not like armies in his space. A large army moving through the countryside brings both civilizations and order to what just moments before were wild spaces. Armies were the type of intrusion into his domain, and Pan could not stand. In other later battles, Pan was also given credit for inflicting panic upon armies. Panic is more than a fear capable of gripping an army. I believe it's a way to commune with Pan himself. Panic is not a normal state of being. It is a liminal space where our imagination runs wild with speculation. Speculation, while our rational brain tries to process exactly what is happening to us. Panic can be fun, such as getting scared at a haunted house, or it can be absolutely crippling, terrifying circumstances. Such panic state, with its rush of adrenaline, can put us in an alternate state of consciousness. This kind sometimes used to confer with gods and spirits. Pan and sexuality. With the exception of his horns, Pan's most well known physical attribute was his erect penis. The earliest images of Pan show a god who is more animal than man, resembling a goat on his hind legs. Over time, he would become more human like, but always retaining his horns and usually his erect phallus. The phallus of Pan symbolized many things. Pan was a god of lust and sex for fun instead of procreation, but he was also the fertilizer of flocks and was held responsible when hunting was especially good or bad. Pan's sexuality was about taking advantage of what was available, whether that was a lover, a hand, or a sheep. Sex between males was especially important to Pan, and engaging in it was a way to honor the god. Pan's sexuality was straight, gay, bi, and other things that I don't have words for. This might have been the cause, partly because he wasn't completely a male god. Beginning at the end of the 5th century BCE, Pan began to sometimes be depicted as female. The versions of Pan featured in the deity with an alluring feminine shape, along with horns and a tail. Pan was also sometimes depicted as a child or as many Pans, with each version of the god representing one of his many aspects. In ancient Greek art, I've seen Pan depicted with the face of a philosopher poet as a mischievous god and was extremely uh, was extremely was an extremely lecherous man. Perhaps much of Pan's appeal, both today and in the past, comes from just how many different personas he has. The death of Pan. While Greek mythology is littered with stories uh, chronicling the deaths of various demigods, Pan is the only god who was believed to have died during pagan and antiquity, and and Polcharks uh, for I guess it's 120 CE. Um, Mor- Moralia. He shares a strange story set during the reign of the Roman Empire. Uh, Tiberius 42 BCE through 37 CE, who ruled from 14 through 37 CE. Much of uh, Polchark's information came from him secondhand, but the source of the story was someone well known to him, the son of his grammar teacher. According to that source, during the voyage from western Greece to Italy, the strange voice called out from the island of Pixie to the boat's captain, an Egyptian by the name of Thomas. Everyone aboard the ship was amazed by this, and most of the travelers, even on the boat, were unaware of the captain's name. Not recognizing the voice, Thomas ignored it initially, but after the third call, Thomas responded, and the voice said, uh, "When you come opposite to to Pelotus, that great announced that great Pan is dead." All aboard the ship debated whether to share the news when they reached Pilatus. The Themis decided he would only share the information when uh, he was given if the seas were calm and the breeze quiet. After they neared uh, Pilotus, everything did grow still. So Themis shared his message. Uh, uh, Plutarch says the message was greeted with sadness and amazement, and as the passengers debarked in Italy from Themis' boat, they shared their story with uh, anyone who would listen. One of those who ended up listening was Emperor uh, Tiberius, who consulted his scholars about the strange message and dispatched people to investigate. However, because of uh, Tiberius's investigation is unknown. The fact that the emperor took such a message seriously suggests that there might be more to the story than what comes from Plutarch. From something that happened 2,000 years ago, we have a surprising amount of detail, including several names and a couple of locations. Whatever happened to that riverboat was something that stayed with people. Over the centuries, several explanations have been offered to uh, Plu- uh, Plutarch's Plutarch's tale. One suggests that Thomas and his passengers simply misheard the voice calling to them from the island of Paxi. According to the story, it was not Pan who died, but perhaps the deity Tammuz, also known as Demused, who in Mesopotamia mythology was murdered by demons. The Greek Adonis, who was gored to death by earlier Artemis or Ares in the form of a bull, has been suggested as a as the dead god. The theory does not explain how the voice from the shore knew the name of Thomas or why the sea and the winds were calm when the boat reached Pelotus, but it does seem more likely than a random voice suggesting that the Greek Pan was dead. The most commonly shared explanation of Pan's death comes from Christians who argue that Pan must have died when Jesus was either crucified or resurrected from the dead. Why Jesus and his dad would have had to wait until such a moment to off Pan has never been explained. Most likely because it's completely nonsensical. Whatever happened on that riverboat will always remain a mystery, though I should point out that worship of Pan continued over the next few centuries, the least until Christianity was made the official religion of the Roman Empire around 381 CE. It's possible to keep a good god down. Sorry, it's impossible to keep a good god down though, and Pan would rise again. In fact, Pan would become even more popular in his second go around. However, that tale won't be told in this book until chapter 11. A Pan ritual in ancient Greece. We don't really know much about how Pan was worshipped in the ancient world. There's no survive. Sorry, there are no surviving documents outlining a ritual for the god. Piece together we can piece together a reasonable approximation of a Pan ritual utilizing archaeological artifacts indicating the caves where the god was worshipped, letters, plays, and what we know about Greek religion in general. The most useful account of a Pan ritual comes from the play Dioscolis, The Grouch, written by the playwright Menander, 290 BCE. Using this play as a starting point, it's possible to reconstruct what a Pan ritual might have looked like in the year 300 BCE. Unlike other gods, Pan was no major feast. Pan had no major feast days on the calendars for most Greece. In Athens, the god was honored yearly with a torchlight race or honor he shared with the god Prometheus. The race most likely commemorated Pan's introduction to the Athenian ruler Philippides, who met Pan while running back to Athens from Sparta, but we don't know much else about it. Worship of Pan, as it generally occurred outside the city centers, happened when someone felt the need for it, either due to some deep longing or perhaps at the urging of the god himself. Rituals for Pan most likely began before noon, when a procession of people would start to make their way to one of Pan's grottos, usually a journey of at least a couple of miles. Flute music often accompanied the journey, and perhaps the sound of trombones. Startling the god was considered foolish, so his worship spaces were always approached with music. Upon arriving to Pan's grotto, always shared with nymphs, a sacrifice was made and or given to the god. If the problem being presented to the god was especially vexing, a large sacrifice would be made, such as a goat or lamb with its genitalia intact. The sacrifice was always presented with noise, in marked contrast to the sacrifices performed to other gods, which were generally done in silence. Once the sacrifice was performed, the best cuts of meat were boiled and eaten by the ritual's participants, and the leftovers were given as a blunt offering to Pan and the nymphs of the grotto. Most often, though, offering to Pan did not involve animal sacrifice. He was far more likely to receive gifts such as grain, bread, figs, wine, grapes, olives, and milk. These offerings would have been shared with those in attendance before being burned as an offering, while milk and foodstuffs were actively shared by Pan and the nymphs. The wine was thought to be all for the god. Once the sacrifice was completed, the men and women present at the ritual would separate. One group would conduct a vigil and wait for a sign from the god, while the other group would retreat to their wineskins and begin partying. Greek religion was extremely uh, patriarchal, but when Pan was worshipped, women were generally on equal footing with their male counterparts. The women were just as likely to go and drink and make the men wait for a sign from the god. Once the sign had been observed, the two groups would reunite for the rest of the ritual. In some Greek rites, religious activities included men and women hurling coarse insults at one another. Scholars generally think such diversions were meant to incite laughter, but if they were used in Pan's rites, I think they may have had a different purpose as a form of uh, flirtation. When I was a boy, I often teased the girls I liked in school, and even now, flirting between potential lovers sometimes involves a bit of teasing. I think a bit of mostly good nature raving might have helped inflame desires before honoring the god. Just before, just what happened during the rest of the ritual is a rather open question. There are a couple of things we can say, though with absolute certainty. Rituals to Pan involve dancing. Pan was a god of dance and losing yourself and your inhibitions. In that dance, the Greeks saw dance as an expression of joy and emotion, often felt by Pan, and one he liked to share with his followers. To accompany the dance, there would have been plenty of flute music. The flute was thought to bring about passion in the best sense of the word. Music can change how we feel, and perhaps most importantly, the siren's Pan's flute was thought to unite the energies of mortal and God and cause a feeling not much different from that of intoxication through alcohol. The feeling of the sirens would have been a part of the ritual until its end at dawn. Sexual activity was likely a part of Pan's rites too. If you were looking for an orgy in the year 300 BCE, a ritual in honor of Pan was likely a place to find one. I'm doubtful that everyone in Pan's rites participated in the more uh, armous, sorry, armorous parts of his rituals, but the very least there would have been plenty of flirting. In addition to the sexual activity, wine drinking would have continued long into the night, ending at daybreak. It was considered an insult to the god to end the ritual before sunrise. Um, in addition to the music being played in the grotto, the women at the ritual would have uh, a terrible sound called a karge. Sorry, no, uh, krage. Yeah, the krage is a single sound that like sobs of a family finding out that a loved one had been killed in war or the bleating of a goat. The cry would have been panicked, fearful, and unpleasant. Its sound would have echoed off the walls of the grotto, mixing with the drunken revelry and the sound of a flute. This brings up a reasonable question. What's the point of making a terrible sound in a ritual that is dedicated mostly to joy? I'm in belief that panic and fear were ways to feel the presence of the god. When experience emotions like panic and fear, our consciousness shifts and we perceive things in different ways. The boundaries between the mundane and the more magical are stripped away. The sense of the unexpected brings a heightened anticipation and plays in the Pan's roles as a god of possession. And witchcraft, this type of activity plays out most vividly during initiation rituals into specific traditions. Their prospective initiates are often left to wonder what exactly is going to happen. The heightened sense of anticipation makes every initiation unique to the individual who has experienced it. Fear of the unknown makes us more aware of our surroundings and a bit disoriented at the same time. Um, Imagine for a moment a dimly lit cave dedicated to Pan, and of the nymphs of the local countryside. You feel in the middle of that cave. Sorry, feel yourself in the middle of that cave while the sounds of the siren of the siren sex and the crowd echo off its walls. Imagine yourself tipsy from drink, and the erotic energy pulsing all around you. All of that uh, power would weigh heavily on your shoulders, almost like a cloak, which rituals are built on raising energy, and the techniques used in Pan's rituals would have raised a lot of it. A Pan ritual was a uh, laboratory in which to mix joy and just a little bit of fear, creating an atmosphere like any other. And as the music and noise echoed off the walls of the cave, those celebrating would have believed Pan was present. Gods weren't just invited to rituals, it was assumed by the Greeks that they actually showed up. Pan would have danced until dawn with his friends. Uh, sorry, with his worshippers. His voice that the sirens and the cries of anguish from the woman honoring him. Dionysus. Pan is not the only horn god of the Greeks. It was far from being the most popular horn deity in the ancient world, though not often throughout. Though not often thought of as a horn god, Dionysus most certainly probably is one. Not only did Dionysus take from a bull in numerous occasions, but he was also sometimes depicted with the horns of that animal. In addition, phallic worship was incredibly important in his cult, away from the prompt and circumstance of temples and state celebrations. The worship of Dionysus required only a wine jar, a vine, a goat, a basket of figs, and then the phallus. During the time of the ancient Greeks and then later the Roman Empire, worship of Dionysus was widespread. Statues honoring the god of the grape can be found from India to Great Britain and all stops in between. His worship took place in public temple ceremonies and figured prom- pro- prominently in the initiation uh, only mysteries of both the classical Greeks and later those of Roman Empire. Dionysus was honored in the mysteries of in the mysteries at uh, El- Eleusis. I don't know why I'm having so many problems with words tonight. Um, and in the Orphic Mysteries, where he was thought to be the king of the world, Dionysus remains a popular god, but today his popularity and familiarity are dwarfed by that of Pan, who traditionally was depicted as a follower of Dionysus. Some of that is most likely because of Pan's popularity in poetry, see chapter 11, but of it may come down to Dionysus' complicated natures. With the exception of Hercules, there are more tales of Dionysus from the ancient world than any other Greek deity, and with widespread worship and immense popularity come conflicting outstandings of the god. Today, Dionysus is most well known as the god of the grapevine and its resulting wine. In mythology, it is Dionysus who introduces uh, viticulture to the world, mostly as a gift of human beings. Sorry, mostly as a gift to human beings. Not only is wine generally safe to drink, the alcohol in it killing bacteria, but its inebriating effects are stern by many as sorry. Its inebriating effects are seen by many as pleasant. Of course, wine also has some formidable downsides. Not only the morning after hangover, but also the ability to produce drunkenness, madness adjacent drunkenness. For many of us, a few extra drinks might only result in a few embarrassing stories the next day, but being touched by the drunken madness of Dionysus often had much more far-reaching consequences. It could result in loss of life and the destruction of family ties. Uh, to abuse the gift of Dionysus is to dishonor the god, uh, who, while a fan of intoxication, is not a fan of bad behavior and inebriation to the point of incoherence. I'm so happy that this book says this about alcohol. Um, uh, when Dionysus chose to punish humans, he did so by driving them mad. The well known example of this appears to uh, Euripides. Appears in the Euripides play The Bacchae, a story that is not for the faint of heart. They're uh, they're the punishment for insulting the god is death through madness, most notably when the Theban king uh, Pentheus dies at the hands of his mother, who has been driven violently mad by Dionysus. Um, yeah. But madness does not always have to be negative. There is, and is the result only when Dionysus' gifts are abused. When his gifts are honored through moderation and offerings, he has been known to gift his followers with divine madness. Divine madness tears apart the veil that separates us from the divine. When the madness comes down upon us, we exist in a space shared with Dionysus. It appears up a portal to the artistic and magical side of ourselves that we often suppress. Madness, in its best form, brings us closer to the gods, while at its worst, it separates us from the divine and those we love. It's easy to picture Dionysus as a god of life and abundance. I know that in my own practice, I often honor him during the harvest. However, Dionysus is also intimately associated with death and the spirits of the dead. According to the Greek philosopher uh, Heraclitus, Heraclitus, Hades and Dionysus, for whom they go mad and enrage, are one and the same. Uh, Heraclitus. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I'm butchering some of these Greek names and also some of the names of the Greek gods. Uh, Many Dionysus festivals explicitly honor the spirits of the dead. In some traditions, it was Dionysus who helped escort souls to the underworld. This association with death also links Dionysus even more firmly to the greater horn god, with whom he shares this association. The myths of Dionysus are prepped with death. Not only do many of his followers and adversaries die, but he himself dies more than once. In some myths, Dionysus is the son of Zeus and uh, Persephone, but is ripped apart by Titan shortly after his birth. His essence is later implemented into Semele, the Theban princess, who would become his mortal mother, as well as a lover of Zeus. Semele meets her mortal death after being tricked by the jealous Hera into asking Zeus to reveal his true form to her. Unfortunately for Semele, the true form of Zeus was a lightning bolt, and his taking of that form kills his mortal mistress. Dionysus is saved by being strewn into the thigh of Zeus, who later gives birth to his son. The story of Zeus giving birth to Dionysus highlights the patriarchal nature of Greek culture, and also serves to illustrate the power of Dionysus to overcome death. Dionysus is the patron deity of my home, primarily because of Chaos' relationship. He shares both with both my wife and me. Aria often laments that she's not liked by Pan, but the affinity and affection she feels for Dionysus is quite real, and probably shouldn't be all that surprising. Women have always been influential uh, in the worship and story of Dionysus, and it's not a stretch to say that uh, that in ancient Greece he was the god of women. Dionysus was raised by women. He turned the most important mortal woman in his life into genuine uh, into genuine deities, and everywhere he went, he was accompanied by women. During the Roman period, public worship of Dionysus was suppressed in many places, primarily because women were the ones who led his cults. The most well known of Dionysus' followers uh, are the uh, are the Maenads, whose very name is linked to the madness given by to them by Dionysus. The Madlads are the female followers of Dionysus who feel and see the god in ritual and in wine, but also experience him in moments of absolute silence. Uh, the a Maenad is a follower of the god who is capable of getting lost in his divine madness and will let nothing stand in his way of that. Uh, for a god associated with both wine and the phallus, Dionysus was remarkably loyal to his wife. Sorry. Uh, Ariadne. I hope I'm saying that right. Uh, once a once immortal and a lover of the hero uh, Theseus, uh, Ariadne became a goddess upon marrying the god of the vine, who was captivated to her beauty. Deities such as Zeus and Poseidon have dozens of lovers, both male and female, in Greek myth, yet there are a few tales of infidelity involving Dionysus. Did he have male lovers? Absolutely. Did he have lovers before uh, Ariadne? Of course, but his myths make him pretty comfortable with uh, Ariadne when he's not married to uh, when he's not married to per- per- Persephone. Sorry, Persephone, as is implied in the mysteries of the uh, Orpheus, like Pan. Dionysus was something of a gender bender. He was thought by some to be effeminated, if to be in uh, yeah, if effeminate and known to dress. I've never seen that word before. And known to dress and drag. In the ancient world, many of Dionysus' most devoted followers were gay men, a trend that has continued into the modern age. In ritual, I once heard Dionysus referred to as they, and the pronoun in an apt one for the wine god. Dionysus was and is capable of appearing in a multitude of roles, which is not surprising for a god who is said to have invented theater. Apart from Dionysus and Pan, there are other figures that might be considered horned or horny gods, often confused with Pan. Uh, uh, Greek satyrs uh, sorry, Greek satyrs very much resemble the god of Arcadia. Many are satyr statues, also half goat and half man, has been mistaken for an image of Pan. In myth, however, satyrs lack the refinement of Pan and are far closer to wild animals of forest than to rational and thinking deity. Uh, Priapus, most frequently said to be the son of Dionysus, and uh, Aph- Aphrodite was far more phallus person, and his erect member often depicted as being comically large. Worship of uh, Priapus differed wildly in ancient Greece. According to some accounts, Priapus was accused by a jealous Hera while in Aphrodite's womb, and with that constantly huge erection, even in the womb, it feels like Aphrodite was a victim of this curse too. Priapus' problem was payback from Hera for Prince Paris of Troy finding Aphrodite more beautiful than her. Aside from this, Priapus seemed to have been worshipped as a fertility and harvest deity. Interestingly, the same this in some places he and Dionysus were worshipped as one and the same, further cementing Dionysus' status as a truly phallic deity.